Ask you questions. We could start off with your blog post back in July about the competition and how you're always thinking about competition. You had a number of topics there, I think, that were very pertinent to product managers, things such as creating the best product or having a long-term strategy.
Yeah. So, I think of product management as in the software industry, and everybody that you're dealing with is software related. Is that right or not?
The majority are probably going to be software. There will be some hardware and a little bit of CPG. Okay,
so I'm going to focus primarily on software from the lens because that's what I know. I think it applies to hardware as well.
Yeah.
I don't know about CPG. But there's really, the modern product manager has roots in one of two organizations. Either it's a Microsoft-style PM or it's a Google-style PM. And they're very, very different.
Okay.
For many years, a Microsoft-style PM was how people were trained to be PMs. And essentially, the PM function got split between a product manager and a project manager. And at Microsoft, the PM that was a classical product manager did not have much to do with the build and specification of the product itself. It had a lot to do with the go-to-market of the product.
Okay.
And the project manager function was much more about the build of the product, and the schedule management and the team management, etc. And there was often then separate engineering management associated with the actual build and development of the product.
Certainly.
That shifted, and I think the Google style is much more effective, where the PM at Google, while they don't own the engineering resources directly, owns the team and effectively looks like the CEO of the team.
Okay.
And my experience in most of the companies that I've been involved in, and Zynga is a good example, where the PM function really is a CEO of the team function.
Okay.
And I think that a PM function, when viewed as CEO of the team, is the most effective function that exists. And many CEOs don't control the direct resources either. Right? So if you think about a CEO in a company, the CEO of a company doesn't necessarily control the engineering resources. The VP of engineering does.
Right.
Now, hierarchically, the VP of engineering would report to the CEO, but the engineering resources are really controlled and owned by the VP of engineering.
Okay. Now,
so
I'm sorry, just using that analogy, though, the CEO of the product, they may have a certain view of the direction that product should end up going. Just like the CEO of a company has a certain view of the direction that a company should go. How do you end up reconciling if there's a difference, say, between the CEO and the board's opinion, or the CEO of the product, being the product manager in this case, and the rest of the organization?
So first and foremost, I don't ever think that the board has an opinion. It's the CEO has the opinion.
Okay.
So if you're working in a company where the CEO is constantly saying that the board says this and the board says that, I encourage you to quit that company and go find a new job.
Sure.
So let's assume that it's the PM and the CEO have a difference of opinion. The CEO of the company has the ultimate say, and so even though the PM is the CEO of the product, part of what that person's job is to advocate for the position that person has. And if that person's not able to advocate effectively, where they keep getting overridden by the CEO, one of two things is going on. Either they're not being particularly effective at making their case,
right,
or the CEO is not giving them room to actually be the PM.
Okay.
And so you're not going to be effective if the CEO is not giving you room. But if it's the first example where you're not actually able to advocate for your position, then you're not being a very effective PM.
Sure.
Also, by the way, most CEOs, not all, but most CEOs tend to be pretty smart, especially if it's a product-focused CEO. And so that CEO is going to have a strong opinion about the product. And as the PM, you should embrace that opinion and feedback and incorporate that into your thinking. If you don't have respect for the CEO, or the CEO is not a product-focused CEO, and they're simply being reactive to other sources of stimuli, then you should question whether you're going to be able to be effective in that kind of an organization.
Okay. How are you seeing product management in the Front Range? What's your exposure been? I know that you mentioned Zynga, but many of the other Techstars companies are now starting to mature to where they're actually bringing in product manager and the skills necessary.
Yeah, I mentioned Zynga primarily because Pincus, as the CEO, is often quoted as saying that he thinks, if you want to be a CEO someday, the best job you could have is a PM.
Right.
Like, go get a PM job somewhere. I think the front range companies, let's take some of the bigger ones, Rally Software, Return Path. Those companies have an excellent culture around product managers. They've incorporated a PM function, deeply into the company. It's very well understood what role it plays. And I think the people in those companies that are playing that role are very effective. I think it's hard to find excellent PMs. There's a relatively limited supply of them. You tend to find people that have a lot of product development experience, but they don't have the broader skill set around the product. So you tie back into the competition post that you talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
I know an awful lot of PMs or product managers that are very, very good at executing a product build, but have no ability to understand the market context in which they're operating.
Okay.
I know a lot of people who, again, maybe do a reasonably good job of staying current and representing the company in the context of the product, but are very, very reactive to competitors. And so their roadmaps are constantly moving around all over the place in a way that's dysfunctional because they get freaked out whenever, they're in a competitive context. Versus being able to really think about what do I have to do, to defend against my competitor while staying on whatever product roadmap I'm on. So how do I not constantly yank the steering wheel around, on the engineering team and on the marketing team and on the ops team because I have a competitor that just did something and now it's everybody run right. And another competitor did something else, everybody run left. That's a hard thing to understand how to process correctly. And frankly, some of it just comes with experience.
Sure.
I'd also say that in smaller companies, in many cases, the CEO should be the PM. And the CEO should be the PM until a period of time where they can't be. So, if you're a 5-person company, having a separate PM function, probably not that effective.
Yeah.
And, from the kinds of CEOs that we like to invest in and the kind of companies we like to get involved in, that person that owns the product often is the CEO up until a certain point. Once they get to a certain point, often still one of the founders owns the product. Could be the CTO, could be the CEO. But you need a layer of people in the mix because now you're at 10, 15, 20 people. And, the CEO can't stay focused on it or the CTO can't stay focused on it the same way. Certainly when you get up to 50, 75 people, now you have a product management function because oftentimes you have more than one product line, that you're trying to deal with.
What I've been seeing is you get up around that 25 threshold. That's where the bar seems to be for most companies.
Yep.
So, one last question for you.
I think historically a lot of software companies at that point, they try to deal with the PM function by distributing, putting people under the VP of engineering, or having, part of the marketing function if sales and marketing were separated, having some product management under the guise of product marketing. And I actually think the companies that have said, no, that's not really what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is, again, use the Google style approach and have somebody who's the CEO of the product in that PM function. It's not that the people have to report to them, but that they have to be part of a group where they own the full integration of the stack.
All right. Good points. One last question for you, because I know your time is extremely valuable. If a new product manager or somebody who wants to get into product management was to come up to you, how would you best advise them to pursue that interest?
Well, I'd say two things. One is if you have no classical training, join a company in a junior role to the product manager, but in the product group where you can see how it's done. So, this is just like you have no experience. Don't try to learn on the job the first time around. And also, while you're doing that, make sure you understand the style of product management that you're learning. If you view it as a generic thing, you may learn a set of things that don't apply broadly. It doesn't mean that you have to work for a big company. You could work for, a medium-sized or even relatively small growth company. But just recognize that, you're not going to come out of the gate as a PM and try to figure it out if you have no experience. If you have experience, then what I'd say is try to find a company that's on a very fast growth trajectory, because you're going to build the most muscle as a PM in a company that's growing very quickly and evolving very quickly. If you're in a company that's fairly stagnant, or you come into a caretaker type PM role where you're watching over an existing product line, that's growing but not growing very quickly, you're not going to build much muscle.
Right. I appreciate your time. Thank you for all the great information. And
sure. My pleasure. Use it however you want.
Okay. Thanks,
all right, man.
and have a good rest of your day.